The Cleveland Browns organization just experienced one of the most revealing 24 hours in recent franchise history, and what Todd Monken disclosed about Shedeur Sanders' development plan for the 2026 season has massive implications for the entire NFL landscape. While mainstream media focuses on surface-level storylines, Monken sat down for an exclusive interview that pulled back the curtain on exactly what he sees in Sanders, how he plans to develop him, and what the Browns' vision looks like moving forward. Meanwhile, the Sanders family is dealing with an absolutely disgusting wave of hatred following Shedeur's Pro Bowl appearance, with Deion Sanders Jr. firing back at critics in powerful fashion. The Jim Schwartz situation appears resolved in the worst possible way for Cleveland's defense, and the entire organization stands at a crossroads that will define the next decade of Browns football. Let's start with the most significant revelation from Todd Monken's post-press conference interview that has Browns fans simultaneously excited and terrified about what's coming. Monken didn't just give generic coach speak about Shedeur Sanders, he provided specific, detailed analysis of what makes Sanders special and outlined his exact developmental approach for the young quarterback heading into the 2026 season. This wasn't vague praise or political maneuvering. This was a head coach laying out his blueprint for maximizing a quarterback's potential. When asked directly about what stands out as elite about Shedeur Sanders and what he hopes to develop moving forward, Monken's response was incredibly revealing. He specifically highlighted Sanders' playmaking ability, calling him a true playmaker who has a unique way of moving around the pocket and finding receivers downfield. That assessment from an offensive coordinator with Monken's experience and track record carries enormous weight. Monken has coached elite quarterbacks, designed championship-caliber offenses, and evaluated talent at the highest levels for over 3 decades. When he identifies specific traits in a young quarterback, you better believe he knows exactly what he's looking at. The phrase unique way of moving around the pocket is particularly significant because it speaks to Sanders' improvisational ability and pocket presence. Elite quarterbacks don't just stand in the pocket like statues. They manipulate space, feel pressure without seeing it, and create throwing lanes through subtle movements that extend plays. That's an incredibly difficult skill to teach, which makes it all the more valuable when a quarterback already possesses it naturally. Monken recognizing that trait in Sanders suggests he sees genuine franchise quarterback potential, not just a developmental project. Monken's comment about loving how Sanders finds receivers downfield is equally important. Deep ball accuracy and the willingness to attack vertically are traits that open up entire offensive playbooks. Conservative quarterbacks who won't push the ball downfield force offensive coordinators to limit their play calling, essentially operating with one hand tied behind their backs. Sanders' ability and willingness to attack downfield means Monken can implement his full offensive system without having to dumb things down or eliminate concepts due to quarterback limitations. However, Monken also acknowledged that he needs Sanders back in the building before he can drill down into specific areas that need work. That honesty is refreshing and demonstrates the kind of thorough evaluation process championship organizations employ. Monken isn't going to make sweeping pronouncements based on limited film study. He wants hands-on time with Sanders, wants to see how he processes information in meetings, wants to evaluate his work ethic and coachability before making definitive judgments about developmental priorities. The broader context of Monken's comments reveals a coach who is approaching this opportunity with appropriate seriousness and urgency. When asked about why this felt like the right time for his first NFL head coaching opportunity, Monken spoke about God putting people in the right place at the right time. That spiritual perspective might resonate differently with different people, but it reveals someone who has been patient, has waited for the right opportunity, and believes this Cleveland situation represents his best chance to succeed as a head coach. Monken specifically mentioned loving his previous time in Cleveland and believing the Haslam family and fan base are craving a consistent winner. That phrase, consistent winner, appeared multiple times throughout his various interviews, which suggests it's a core part of his philosophy and vision. Not just winning occasionally, not just having one good season, but building something sustainable that competes year after year after year. That's exactly what Cleveland desperately needs after decades of mediocrity and disappointment. When pressed about his vision for what the Cleveland Browns will look like in 2026 and beyond, Monken provided a beautifully simple yet profound answer. He wants effort, physicality, and execution that pops off the tape. Those three elements might sound basic, but they represent the foundation of winning football at any level. Teams that play hard, play physical, and execute their assignments consistently win football games regardless of talent disparities. Monken understands that culture and fundamentals matter just as much as scheme and talent. The emphasis on pops off the tape is particularly telling because it reveals Monken's awareness that everyone is always watching and evaluating. Opponents study film, media analyzes performance, fans scrutinize every play, and organizational decision-makers assess whether their investment is producing returns. Monken wants a team that looks undeniably good on film, where the effort and execution are so obvious that nobody can question whether his players are giving maximum effort. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that has dominated Brown's discourse for the past 24 hours: the Jim Schwartz situation. Multiple credible sources, podcasters, and insiders familiar with the situation are reporting that Schwartz is essentially gone from Cleveland. The word on the street suggests Schwartz walked into the Browns facility after not getting the head coaching job, said his piece to organizational leadership, and made it clear he's moving on. That's a disaster scenario for Cleveland's defense, but it might be unavoidable given how the coaching search played out. The irony of this situation is almost poetic. Cleveland had one of the top 5 defenses in the entire NFL last season, featuring elite players like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, alongside promising young talent throughout the defensive front. That unit was arguably the best performing aspect of the entire organization, and now the coordinator who built that success is apparently leaving because ownership decided to hire an offensive-minded head coach instead of promoting from within. That's organizational dysfunction at its finest, and Browns fans have every right to be furious about it. However, Monken addressed this concern head-on during his press conference, making it abundantly clear that he took the Cleveland job specifically because of the defensive talent already in place. He famously stated that when preparing to face Cleveland as an opponent, he wasn't worried about chipping the defensive coordinator. He was worried about chipping Myles Garrett. That distinction matters because it puts the credit where it belongs, on the players who execute at elite levels, not just the coaching. If Jim Schwartz does indeed leave Cleveland, any defensive-minded coordinator in football would absolutely jump at the opportunity to inherit that talent. You've got a superstar defensive lineman in Myles Garrett, who is one of the most disruptive players in the entire league. You've got Denzel Ward, an elite cornerback who can shut down opposing number 1 receivers. You've got young talent throughout the defensive line and secondary that provides a foundation for sustained success. That's a defensive coordinator's dream scenario, walking into a situation with established stars and promising prospects already in place. The challenge becomes whether Monken can find a defensive coordinator who can maintain the excellence Schwartz established while also fitting into Monken's overall vision for the organization. Chemistry between head coaches and coordinators matters immensely because they need to be philosophically aligned, need to communicate effectively, and need to present a unified front to players. Finding the right defensive coordinator will be one of Monken's most important early decisions as head coach. Now, let's shift to the absolutely disgusting treatment Shedeur Sanders received following his Pro Bowl performance. Despite throwing 2 touchdowns and showcasing his elite arm talent on one of football's biggest stages, Sanders faced a relentless wave of criticism, negativity, and outright hatred on social media. The backlash was so severe and widespread that the entire Sanders family felt compelled to respond publicly, with Deion Sanders Jr. posting powerful messages addressing the haters directly. Deion Sanders Jr.'s first tweet captured the absurdity of the situation perfectly. "It's a beautiful thing seeing how much pleasure they get from hating on my bloodline." That statement is simultaneously defiant, observational, and slightly pitying toward people who derive joy from attacking others. The Sanders family has been in the spotlight for decades, has dealt with criticism from all angles, and has developed thick skin out of necessity. But the intensity of hatred directed at Shedeur specifically following the Pro Bowl clearly crossed a line. Shedeur himself posted a gracious, classy message thanking everyone involved with the Pro Bowl for the opportunity. He specifically mentioned coaches, players, and fans, expressed gratitude for the amazing experience of connecting with elite NFL talent, talked about learning and growing from the experience, and gave thanks to God for the opportunity. That's about as humble and appropriate as a response can possibly be from a young player who just participated in one of the league's marquee events. The
On
fact that
everything
such a
he's able
gracious,
to do for
thankful
this day.
message still didn't satisfy critics reveals that nothing Shedeur does will ever be good enough for certain segments of the football community. He could throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, and people would complain about his completion percentage. He could win a Super Bowl, and people would say the defense carried him. He could cure cancer in the offseason, and people would criticize his technique. That's the reality of being under the Sanders spotlight, and it's absolutely exhausting to witness. Deion Sanders Jr. followed up with a biblical quote from Psalms that speaks directly to standing strong in the face of adversity. When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident. That's a powerful statement of faith and resilience that demonstrates how the Sanders family processes hatred and negativity. The religious framing of their response is significant because it reveals their core values and worldview. The Sanders family clearly sees these attacks as spiritual warfare rather than just sports criticism. They believe there are forces actively working against them, trying to tear them down, and ultimately destined to fail because God has different plans. Whether you share their religious perspective or not, you have to respect the strength it takes to maintain that level of confidence and faith when facing relentless public criticism. The unfortunate reality is that situations like this have become increasingly common in modern sports media and social media culture. People hide behind anonymous accounts and spew vitriol at athletes, coaches, and public figures without any accountability or consequences. The toxicity has reached levels that are genuinely concerning for mental health, particularly for young athletes like Shedeur, who are still developing emotionally and psychologically while also trying to perform at the highest athletic levels. Instead of uplifting a young quarterback who just participated in the Pro Bowl as a rookie, large segments of the football community chose to tear him down. Instead of celebrating his accomplishments and potential, critics focused on interceptions thrown in a meaningless flag football exhibition. Instead of recognizing the historic nature of a rookie quarterback starting the Pro Bowl, people questioned whether he deserved to be there at all. That negativity reflects poorly on the critics, not on Shedeur Sanders. The parallel situation with Coach Prime and the recent controversy over fines he implemented for players at Colorado adds another layer to understanding why the Sanders family feels under siege. Deion Sanders catches criticism for literally everything he does, whether it's his coaching methods, his recruiting strategies, his media presence, or his parenting. People who have never coached a down of football feel entitled to criticize every decision he makes, and that criticism inevitably extends to his sons as well. Now, let's return to the actual football analysis from the Arena Show segment that provided fascinating insight into what the Pro Bowl experience means for young players like Shedeur Sanders. The breakdown from former NFL players about getting nervous, despite it being a play-around game, was particularly revealing because it humanizes these elite athletes and reminds us that they feel pressure and anxiety just like everyone else. The point about quarterbacks typically discussing amongst themselves who wants to go first, with Shedeur volunteering and saying, "I got it," speaks volumes about his confidence and leadership. Think about that scenario. You're a rookie quarterback surrounded by established Pro Bowl players, including Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco. And when it's time for someone to step up and start the game, you raise your hand and volunteer. That takes legitimate confidence, not arrogance, but genuine belief in your abilities and willingness to put yourself out there. The it factor discussion is always somewhat nebulous because people struggle to define exactly what that means. But you know it when you see it. Some players have that intangible quality that makes them rise to big moments, that makes them comfortable under pressure, that makes them natural leaders regardless of their age or experience level. Shedeur Sanders has demonstrated that quality repeatedly throughout his football career. from high school through college and now into his rookie NFL season. The experience of being around greatness and picking the brains of elite players like Joe Burrow cannot be overstated in terms of developmental value. Young quarterbacks can learn more from a single conversation with a Super Bowl caliber quarterback than from watching hours of film alone. Burrow can explain his pre-snap thought processes, his post-snap reads, his footwork adjustments, and his leadership philosophy in ways that give Shedeur actionable insights to incorporate into his own game. The former player's comment about fanning out around great players is wonderfully honest and relatable. Even professional athletes who have reached the Pro Bowl level still get starstruck around legends and elite performers. That ability to remain humble, to recognize greatness in others, and to actively seek knowledge from more experienced players is crucial for continued development. Athletes who think they already know everything stop improving immediately. The discussion about not putting much stock into the actual game statistics because it's flag football with no real game planning is absolutely correct. Shedeur threw 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions during the Pro Bowl, but those numbers are essentially meaningless for evaluating his abilities. Flag football at the Pro Bowl is about having fun, building relationships, and giving fans entertainment. It's not real football where schemes, preparation, and execution under pressure determine outcomes. The focus on Shedeur's tweet about embracing the opportunity and building relationships was the most insightful part of the entire segment. That perspective shift from analyzing flag football statistics to recognizing the networking and learning value of the Pro Bowl experience demonstrates mature understanding of what actually matters for long-term career success. The relationships Shedeur built during Pro Bowl week could benefit him for the rest of his career, as he develops friendships, mentorships, and connections throughout the league. The NFL player brotherhood discussion is fascinating because it reveals the insider perspective that fans rarely see. Players compete viciously against each other on Sundays, talk trash, celebrate after big plays against opponents, and battle for supremacy. But they also protect each other against outside criticism, support each other through challenges, and maintain bonds that transcend team loyalties. That brotherhood will benefit Shedeur throughout his career, as veteran players who met him at the Pro Bowl look out for him in various ways. The observation that Shedeur was the biggest draw at the Pro Bowl is undeniably accurate, despite how much that reality frustrates his critics. People tuned in specifically to watch Shedeur throw to elite receivers, to see how he looked against other Pro Bowl talent, to evaluate whether he belonged on that stage. His name carries weight because of his father's legacy, his own college accomplishments, and the narrative surrounding his NFL development. The ultimate irony that the quarterback who started the Pro Bowl isn't even guaranteed to start for his own team next season is absolutely wild when you think about it. That's unprecedented in Pro Bowl history. Typically, starting the Pro Bowl indicates you're an established star at your position, someone who has earned respect through sustained excellence. Shedeur started the Pro Bowl as a rookie who is currently in a quarterback competition for his team's starting job. That's bananas, and it speaks to both his immense potential and the unusual nature of Cleveland's quarterback situation. The comment about Shedeur being born to throw a football with sweet and deadly accurate mechanics perfectly captures what makes him special. Some quarterbacks have to work incredibly hard to develop acceptable throwing mechanics. Shedeur has always had natural, fluid mechanics that produce tight spirals with excellent ball placement. That's a massive advantage that makes everything else about playing quarterback easier. When Shedeur stated on Kay Adams' show that what he did last year in his 7 starts proved I can dominate in this league, people immediately jumped to criticize his confidence. But context matters enormously for understanding that quote. Shedeur wasn't proclaiming himself the greatest quarterback in NFL history. He was expressing confidence that his rookie season performance demonstrated he belongs at this level and can compete with the best. That's healthy confidence for a young quarterback, not delusional arrogance. The broader pattern emerging from all these storylines is that Shedeur Sanders faces an uphill battle regardless of what he accomplishes on the football field. Critics will always find reasons to discount his success, to question his abilities, to suggest he's overrated or overhyped. That reality makes his accomplishments even more impressive because he's achieving them while carrying that additional burden of constant criticism and skepticism. For Todd Monken and the Cleveland Browns, the Shedeur Sanders developmental project represents the most important aspect of their entire organizational rebuild. If Sanders develops into a franchise quarterback, everything else becomes easier. Roster construction becomes simpler when you have the quarterback position solved.
I'm just trying to make sense of it, and I'm just trying to figure it out, like the JFK case.
Draft strategy becomes more flexible when you're not desperately searching for your next signal caller.
And I get it. Monken's
detailed comments about what he sees in Sanders and how he plans to develop him should give Browns fans genuine optimism. This isn't a coach who got stuck with a quarterback he didn't want. This is a coach who identified specific elite traits and has a clear vision for maximizing that potential.
Not always. We saw Trey Benson,
playmaking ability, pocket movement, and downfield accuracy Monken praised are precisely the traits that translate to NFL success when properly developed and supported. The challenge for Cleveland becomes surrounding Shedeur with the offensive weapons and infrastructure necessary for him to succeed. Todd Monken can scheme up brilliant play designs, but if the wide receivers can't get separation, if the offensive line can't protect, if the running game can't establish balance, even the best quarterback will struggle. That's where Andrew Berry's roster construction becomes crucial as Cleveland heads into free agency and the draft. The defensive situation with Jim Schwartz apparently leaving creates complications, but shouldn't derail the overall organizational trajectory. Yes, losing an elite defensive coordinator hurts, and yes, continuity matters for sustained excellence. But the defensive talent Cleveland has assembled will attract quality coordinator candidates. And Monken has proven he can work collaboratively with defensive staff throughout his career. Finding the right replacement becomes priority number one after finalizing the offensive coaching staff. For the Sanders family, dealing with relentless criticism has become an unfortunate part of their daily reality. Deion Jr.'s biblical references and defiant tweets won't change the minds of committed haters, but they serve an important purpose for maintaining the family's collective mental health and spiritual strength. Knowing they can rely on each other, knowing they share faith that transcends sports success or failure, knowing they're built for this kind of pressure, those factors matter enormously for long-term resilience. The upcoming months will be absolutely critical for determining how all these storylines resolve. Does Jim Schwartz indeed leave Cleveland, or do they work out some compromise that keeps him on staff? Does Shedeur Sanders enter training camp as the clear starting quarterback, or does Monken create genuine competition? Do the Browns make smart free agency and draft decisions that provide Sanders with weapons? Does the negativity surrounding the Sanders family intensify or subside as the season approaches? What we know with certainty is that Todd Monken sees genuine franchise quarterback potential in Shedeur Sanders. We know Monken has a specific developmental plan focused on maximizing Sanders' playmaking ability and pocket presence. We know the Browns are committed to building a consistent winner through effort, physicality, and execution. We know the Sanders family remains unshaken by criticism and hatred from outside sources. And we know the next several months will bring more drama, more developments, and more storylines that will shape the future of the Cleveland Browns franchise. If you made it this far, you're clearly invested in understanding the complete picture rather than just consuming surface-level headlines. Smash that like button to support this kind of in-depth analysis. Drop a comment with your thoughts on whether Shedeur Sanders will be Cleveland's Week 1 starter and whether the Browns made a mistake letting Jim Schwartz walk. And absolutely subscribe because the NFL never sleeps, and you need someone breaking down every significant development with the depth and context it deserves. This is where you get the real story, the insider perspective, and the analysis that connects dots others miss. Until next time, shake off the haters, stay focused on what matters, and remember that success is the best revenge. Peace.